Hello everybody, this is Lehman Crafton Jr., also known as Zor Valachan on the forums as well as other places on the internet. I am going to do a mostly complete video tutorial on how to get a Torg Eternity game set up on Roll20. This tutorial is primarily for those who have never been on Roll20 at all, so I'm going to go into a lot of depth in what Roll20 can offer, but it is focused on Torg Eternity and not on other games, although a lot of what I show here you can apply to other games as well. So in this tutorial I'm going to basically assume that you have a free account. The pro account allows a few other things to be done, and I think I'll make another separate video for that. But for this video I'm just going to do it as if you have a completely free account and show you things that you can do. So if you don't have a Roll20 account, go ahead and go to roll20.com or .net and sign up. Like I said, it's free. You'll make an account, and then you'll get to a home page that will look like this, but you probably won't have any other games because you've just made an account. As you can see, I have a lot of Torg games that I either play in or game master, as well as some other people's Torg's games that they wanted to show me. But we want to show how to completely create a new game. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll go up here and you'll see this button, create new game. So we'll press that, and that will do a start new game. Here you can type a name. So I'm going to type in Torg Eternity tutorial, and then we won't click that we're ready quite yet. We'll go down here where it says optional, choose a character sheet, and we can go here and type in Torg, and there's two character sheets to choose from. The first one, just Torg, is for the old Torg from the 1990s, but we're making a Torg Eternity campaign and we're going to use this character sheet. So we go ahead and we click that, and it'll show you a image of what the character sheet is going to look like. The author of this character sheet is Gigs, G-I-G-S. He took the old Torg Eternity character sheet that a lot of people had modified over time and added things to, and he kind of looked at that, and then seems like he completely broke everything down, started from the ground up, and made a nice clean character sheet that has lots of different things that you can do with it. And I'll do a pretty extensive part of this video showing you everything that this character sheet can do, because a lot of things are hidden and not readily available, but it is very, very awesome character sheet once you know how to do things. So once we have given it a name, we've selected the character sheet, we can just click this I am ready, create game, and now we have a game. And here we have a little drop box that we can drop a art file, a JPEG, PNG, or GIF, or GIF, I guess is what it's supposed to be called, but I always say GIF. And you just drop that in here and it will give you a nice little title. If we go back to our home screen, you can see that various game masters have given certain art, but here is the basic one without anything. So we'll go back into Torg Eternity. The next thing that we will want to do is here you can see where it says token marker sets. It comes with the default token markers, and I'll show you what those do, and then later I'll show you how to make your own. But this is important. for the tokens that you use to represent characters, you use these token markers to show conditions such as, is someone stymied, are they vulnerable, have they disconnected, are they waiting, are they aiming, things like that. You can type in here when your next game will be to let everybody know, and just different little things that you can do. We'll go ahead and launch the game. So now we've created our first page automatically, and you can see your pages by going up here to this little blue tab, page toolbar, and you can click that. And here's the page that we're on, and if we want to make new pages, we can just click this plus sign and create a new page. And then you can name it, you can click there and then name it how you want. A lot of times I'll just write like scene 1 for the first scene, scene 2, and I'll make a different page for each scene. And there's a little gear symbol, page settings, that you can click, and it starts every page 25 by 25 squares. So these squares, it'll be 25 across and 25 squares up and down. You can change that if you need to. The background color is going to change the background color. You click OK and it changed. I usually don't change the background colors too much because I like putting maps on the game, and that covers the background anyway, so I usually leave that blank, but you can do it however you want. For the page scale, right now it sets as a default of 1 square is 5 feet across. Torg uses meters, so 2 meters is about 6 feet, so that's close to the 5 foot normal square that lots of games use. So I usually just make it 2 meters, but you can adjust it, as you can see, to however many you want. And then we have the grid enabled, so that shows the grid lines. You can take that off if you don't use grids. And then the type can be square, or you can use hexes if you want. And then the measurement, there's a ruler that I'll show you how to use later, but the measurement, if you set it for D&D 5th edition, 4th edition, it means that your diagonal from one square to another square is going to be 1, as well as up and down. If you use Pathfinder or 3rd edition, you can set it differently. I usually just keep it at the default. And then you can change the actual grid color, and I usually like making it red. Red usually stands out against background, so it's easy to tell where the different grids are. And then you have Fog of War that you can use. The Advanced Fog of War dynamic lighting are for pay accounts. I'm not sure if you have to have a pro or if you can get a level between the free account and the pro account, but that's where the advanced and the dynamic lighting. But the normal Fog of War, any game master can enable. So we'll go ahead and enable that. And then as you see, it went back. Actually, it chose a gray, but that's fine. But you can see that the red grid stands out pretty good against the gray background. So the first thing we'll want to do after we set up a page is we want to go, you have this list of tools here that you can use. And the top one, you can use this, and that will allow you to select a token and move a token, as well as art, depending on which layer you have. The second one is your layer, and there's various layers. Like the top one is your map and background. So once this is set as a map or background, you can switch to another layer, and then the map and background won't change if you grab tokens and move them around. So I'm going to zoom out, and you can use this zoom plus and minus to zoom in and out. And you have over here at the top right hand, you have different tabs. So the first tab is chat, your second tab is art. So we want to click art, and you can see there's a thing here called My Library, and that's where you can add your own images, either that you've created yourself or that you have got off the web. There is marketplace purchases where people on Roll20 will sell their artwork, and you can buy, and various different free and subscription. So I want to use my library because I have, as you can see, tons and tons and tons and tons of images that I've added over the last years. And we'll go ahead and we'll say that we want to do a living land background, so I can type in jungle here, and I got 3 different backgrounds pictures that I can use for the jungle. So I'll do one that has kind of a jungle path on it, so I can drag and drop that, and it doesn't show up too big at first, but you can put it where you want to start. And I usually give myself a border, because if you expand it and you kind of move it, it might get off, as you can see. So if I give myself a square border, then I make sure that the whole map is there. Now if I only wanted to use part of the map, of course I could always just use that part, but if I'm using a whole map, I'll go ahead and make sure that the whole thing is there. And then you can expand the different sides and make it as big as you want. And you'll see down here that I left a blank area, and this can be used for some game masters like having their players put their cards on a kind of a game mat, so they'll have a little game mat down here. Or I use it to put things that I don't want players necessarily to see, and I'll show you how the game master can hide things from the players, but I usually use a blank area down here. One thing you will see is my little avatar guy, the Gaunt Man, is here, and it has a color associated with it. On anything that offers a color, you can always change it. And then I usually make sure that my players all have different colors so I can tell who it is. One of the things that's kind of cool is it links all of your clicks to your color. So if I want to actually show something on the map, I can left click and hold, and it makes a little ping, so I can point things out and do that. And as you see, I kind of was moving the map, so we want to go up here and we want to go to select move, or we want to go to objects and tokens. So that switches the layer, so now that map is staying where it was, and I can click on it without moving anything on the map. One thing that you'll notice is that my squares here don't match up quite right with the squares up here. And if you have something that you've gotten from the internet or somewhere else that has its own grids, what you can do is you can right click. Let me go back to my map. And you right click, and you can get this where it says advanced, and then you can put align to grid. Now this grid alignment tool, you go to what the map is, not necessarily what the background is. And you'll want to start in the corner of one of the grid squares on your background, and you want to drag and make a 3x3 square as close as you can get. And once you do that, it'll say okay, and it'll give you kind of numbers for pixels. And normally on grids, your pixels are squares, but since I kind of moved things and adjusted them, they might not be. So then I can click align to grid, and as you see, the red squares are overlapping with the black grid squares that were on that page. So then if you zoom in, you'll see how those really lined up really well. So I'll use this more close view. You can also use the scroll on the side and the top to move things, or you can right click and hold and that move things as well. So that's how you get a background map. So we'll want to switch back to objects and tokens. And one thing I'm going to do right now is I usually try to keep my area as clear as possible. So over here I have my avatar. If I go up to my tabs, I can go to my setting tab and I can scroll down to where it says avatars. And here it says player video avatar size. So I usually just use voice, I don't use video. So you can make it bigger if you want, regular, small, and I usually just do names only. So my name's here, and then any of your players will just line up even with that at the bottom. So we have our background, and now we want to actually add characters to it. So what you can do is you can go up here and you'll see the third tab is called Journal tab. And you can click that and there's an add button here. And you click the add button and you get three choices: character, handout, and folder. So I know I'm going to have characters in this game, so I'm going to make a folder and just call it characters. And then that appears. And now I want to add a character, so I can click add and I'll add characters. So this is what will appear on every time you make a new character. It will automatically give it a strange name, edit, faux, emit. So you can go over to name and change it whatever you want to. We'll go ahead and let's make a Orosh monster hunter. So we can just name her what we want. I'll name this one Arla. And then here we can add whose journal we want it to appear. So if you want every player to be able to see that character sheet, you can choose all players. If you only want the character or the player who owns the character to see it, you can just put their name individually, and as a game master you'll be able to see everybody. But I always add myself as a game master also, and I'll show you why later. And then can that character sheet be edited and controlled by somebody? So even if you have everybody allowed to see the character, you might only want the player that can actually, the player whose character that actually is to be able to edit as well as you as the game master. So then you can put in that person. And then avatar, you can, if you have a photo, or a player can actually, this is one of the few things a player can add art to, the player can put what they want their avatar to be. I'll go ahead and I'll go over to my art library and I'll delete the jungle, and I have a character. If I go down, there should be a monster hunter Arla. Let's see if I put it under Monster Hunter or if I put it under Arla. Nope. So here I have my Monster Hunter, and I can just drag and drop that to the avatar. And then my Monster Hunter avatar appears. And then we'll use this default token later, but I'll go ahead and save it after I show you these other two parts. You or the player can add anything to this bio and info. So if you want to add height, weight, eye color, hair color, or just various things you want to keep track of, you can put that in the bio and info. And then the Game Master notes are only visible to the Game Master. So I use this if players will play certain subplots like romance, but they're in the middle of a battle with vampire bats and it's not appropriate. I can just type in romance, and that will remind me that at some point I need to get to that romance and not forget about it. So then we can save changes, and as you see, your avatar is here, and then the Game Master notes here remind me that there's that romance. If we've dealt with the romance, I can delete that, and then now they have a mistaken identity. And just to show you what it would be here, let's just say that she has white hair, and then I can save. And now you'll see the avatar here, what's up in the bio here, and then the Game Master notes here. This attribute and abilities tab you don't really need at all. Basically anything that gets a number value on the character assigned to it will show up here. But there's no real need for it in Torg Eternity. So we have the character sheet is the middle tab. So we click that and we actually get the character sheet. And this will be a pretty long part of the video because I want to go through every bit of the character sheet because there's lots and lots of cool things here, and a lot of them are hidden or not blatantly obvious, but there's lots and lots of cool little tricks and things that you can do with the character sheet to make it good. So we'll start off, you have this big thing of announcements. Each time Gigs updates it, he'll write announcements, but when you're actually playing the game you don't really need that, so you can click close this frame. And if for any reason you want to have that open again, you can click this little gearbox and you can go down to the toggle announcements, and then that pops it up, and then you can either close it or toggle off with the check mark to get rid of it. So now we have our character sheet, and a thing that you can do with the character sheet if you want is, because as you see I can't move it up and down and it's taking up a lot of real estate covering the view, so you can click the little pop out, and now the character sheet is popped out, and you can kind of drop it here to see what's going on. You can move it up here, you can minimize it, and you can bring it back. You can also click the little Roll20 die symbol, D20 symbol, and you can show it as a tab, and then you can take the tab and you can put it with your other tab, and then you can just go back and forth. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it normal like it was, so I got rid of it and I'll bring it back. And now since we have our character over here in the journal tab, we want to put her in the folder. So if we highlight over her little avatar picture and we bring it down, you'll see this little square that's indented appears. So we can put her there. And now when the folder is expanded, we see her, and when it's contracted, we just see that it's a folder. So that's how you can organize your character sheets as well as different handouts. So we'll get back to the character sheet here. We can put her name up here. Actually, I think it was there. And then her race, she's a human. And we said that she was from Orosh, so we can choose that. And when you choose the cosm, it automatically fills in the axiom levels. If for any reason in your game, especially for say Core Earth characters who get that perk that allows them to boost their axioms, you can always change the axiom also. So I moved the 16 to 17 in Magic, and if it's done accidentally, you can move to a different and then go back and it'll reset it to the base values. So I think that's really cool. It automatically does it, as well as giving you the power to actually do adjustments. Up here we have total XP, so when people get their experience at the end of the act, you can type in the XP, and then anything that they have not spent can be here. And you'll see it says alpha, and this automatically calculates. So once you reach 50 XP, it's going to go to beta. And I believe, what is it, 200 to get the gamma, etc. So we'll go back down to 0 XP, it goes back to alpha. So that's automatically calculated. Here we have 4 tabs. The only one currently available is abilities. Story will be a tab for players to do information that they want to write in it. And the next 2 are for game masters. Threats is supposed to be a tab that is so that a game master can do a quick NPC or threat without having to fill out a whole character sheet. And then adventure is going to be also for the game master, which can kind of probably be something that they can take notes on. But for now, we just want to deal with the abilities tab, which is the main character sheet. And there's lots of things on the character sheet, so I'll go over them. We have the character sheet's divided up into different areas: skills, attribute, defense, status, perks, weapons, powers, armor, equipment, derived ratings. So the first thing a character has is their stats, and it kind of starts everything off with a base 8 to get your 40 starting points, but you can change that if you want. So you can just type in, say he has a good charisma, but his mind's not so good, so we up the charisma by 10, we lowered the mind by 6, so you can give all the adjustments for the base. And then the total here is going to be your base plus any modifiers you have equals the total. So say the character got a bless spell or bless miracle placed on them, and say it upped their dex by 2, you can click 2, so it's going to add the 8 and your 2 to get your 10. And I like this because then you know what's actually their base that won't change unless, say, that they're injured or gain a perk. But temporary modifiers you can put in there, and then you don't forget, because if you would raise this to a 10 and then when the miracle stopped, you might forget and keep it as a 10. So we'll change that back to an 8. And then as you see over here, these numbers were changing because energy weapons, fire combat, melee weapons are based off of dex. So now they're 8s, but I have it modified by 2. So now everything is going to go up there. So if you want to roll versus a direct attribute, you press right on the name. So we'll go over to our chat box because all rolls are going to go up on our chat. So that's the very first tab. That kind of looks like chat bubbles from comic books. And if you want to say roll against your charisma, you press the charisma. It gives an input value of modifier. So if you have anything affecting you, you can either put your bonus or your penalty here. So if we say she has, for whatever reason, a +1, you can type in a +1, or she has a penalty of a -1, you can type in -1. So we'll give her a bonus of 1, and then you hit submit, and you'll see over here that the value is 10. So we gave her a charisma of 10, so that starts as a 10. We gave her a modifier for a +1, and then it shows your roll. And if you hover over that number, it has like 1d20 with a little exclamation point, and it's basically just telling you it's rolling a d20. It explodes on 10s and 20s, but if you look at the very end, it says that it's 18, so that's the number it generated. And then that bonus is a +5, so if you take your +5, add it to your modifier, that's +6, add it to the 10 of your base value, you get a 16. So then your results is 16. You can compare it to the difficulty and determine success or failure and what success level there is. If you're in up round, you can press up, and it'll ask you what the input value is, and you need to write that 1 again. We gave her a 1. It can remember the roll, but it can't remember the modifier. So we want to make sure that that modifier carries over. So we'll put a 1 and we hit submit. And then it'll say what is the last roll, and we hit an 18. And I did say that it will remember that. The default is it won't remember it, and I'll show you how that works. So if we do last roll of 18, then we'll see that the value was 10. We gave it a +1 modifier. The last roll was 18, and then you see this roll here is a 55. So if I look and hover over it, my first roll was an 18, and then this roll was 37. So I must have rolled like a 20 and then a 17. It exploded. I am so close to a glory on this up round. I want to spend a possibility. My input value, remember to put a 1. What was my last roll? 55 was the total for the roll itself. And boom, I got a total roll of 70. So I could play that glory if I had that in my pool. So the value was 10, the +1 modifier. Previous roll was 55. I spent the possibility, got it up to a 70, which is a +17 bonus, and my result is the 28. And as you'll see down here, it's a roll of 60 plus, so it actually even reminds you, hey, here's a possible glory. If you have a glory card, you might want to play it. So it kind of reminds you. And you'll see here when I did my up, it'll show that it was an up, and if I spend a possibility, it shows it as a possibility. What the buttons also can be used for is the up can be used for any of those COSM specific possibilities that don't have a minimum of a 10. So sometimes I want to say the living land won't have a minimum of a 10 if you're trying to use it for something that is out of the axiom bounds of the living land and things like that. The possibility, you can also use that for a drama and hero card. So, and you can just keep adding them. I already hit my glory. I definitely probably hit an outstanding, so there's no need, but if you wanted to do a possibility, you click it, a hero card, click it again, drama card, click it again. So that's how things show up in chat. Now, if you wanted to remember what you rolled, you're going to have to make a token, and so we'll do that in a little bit because I want to keep going over this character sheet. So that's how you would do I think we did charisma checks. So if you want to do a skill check, so we said we were going to make a monster hunter, so let's give her a fire combat 3. So I got 3, so she has a total of 11. I can click that fire combat. We won't give her a modifier, and then it'll appear over here. And as you can see now, it says fire combat, and it kind of goes through the whole thing. And I guess I accidentally, or sorry, the 7 rolled was kind of low, so it was a -2. So a -2 bonus added to your value of 11 gives you your 9. So that works with the attributes and all your skills. Now if you click skills, you'll get a pop out that has all these check boxes, and all the ones that are check boxed will show up over here in your skills. So if you have spent some experience and you want to get some other skills, you can just click those and then click the skills up here again, and you have your skills added to your list. You got your combat skills, you got your interaction skills, and then your other skills. And they'll all default off of what they should be. So all your combat skills are dex, your intimidates off of spirit, your maneuvers off dex, taunts, charisma, and down here, etc. But it does allow you to change it. So I can click that and I can change it. Because sometimes it might seem like, hey, fire combat is always going to be a dex, but it's not always going to be a dex. Sometimes you might have it be a mind. You might find a weapon and you're not quite sure what its properties are, or somebody's shooting at you and you might ask the game master, hey, what type of weapon is that? And they'll say, okay, use your fire combat with your mind. And then you can make the roll. And as you see, the value is a 9 now instead of an 11, because you're not actually shooting at something, you're trying to figure something out. So another one that uses that quite often is willpower. Willpower is normally based off of spirit for your faith-based things and your magic-based things like spells and miracles, but your psionics and I believe the pulp power mind control stuff is based off of mind, so you can switch it to a mind or spirit. So that allows for that. Two other things that appear is you can have one that is your language. So if you click language, it's going to bring up a new section, and you can click add, and then you can type in what language. So say my character, she's from Aurora. You can put in whatever language you want. So maybe you want her to have Hindi as a language. You can just add that, and then it automatically adjusts it to mind. If you need to get rid of that, you can hit this modify, and then there's a little trash can that appears, and you can get rid of it. And then if you want to hide it again, you can just unclick it. And then at the bottom here, there's one called custom skills. And a lot of my players have found that they like adding normal skills to their custom area if they have a skill that's favored, either through perks or through items. So you might have find, but then you have some goggles, or you have a perk that allows you to have find be favored. So you can type find, and then you can do an F for favored. Maybe you'll want to do an asterisk, and then you can set the stat mind. You can set your adds, and then it'll calculate everything for you. So this will just be something that if you aren't favored, you can just click it up here, or it's going to be the same thing, but like I said, a lot of my players like using the customs so that they don't forget that skill that they have is favored. And just like I showed you over with attribute mods, you can do the same thing. So if you have anything that gives you a skill mod temporarily, you can put that here. It'll add the adds to your mod to give you a total. So that was everything with the skills. With the attributes, if you click that, you'll get an input value. Again, is it a penalty or a modifier? We're looking at straight rolls here. And then it's going to ask, is what you're rolling, is that going to count as skilled? Because a lot of times when you are rolling versus an attribute, it's because you don't have the skill. So if you don't have the skill, you can click unskilled, and it's not going to re-roll on 20s. It's only going to re-roll on 10s. And then the other choice is disfavored, which is going to ignore the first re-roll. So whether that's an up, a 10, a 20, or possibility, you can do a disfavored. But we'll say it's skilled, and then again, we get it here. And wow, I rolled a 32. I was doing a lot of good rolls today. So it just does a basic roll. It shows you your bonus, and then it shows you the result. The result is not added to any attribute or skill, because I did a generic roll. So if I had rolled versus dexterity, I'm going to have to take my 8 and add that to the 10 bonus that I generated. So basically this attribute, if you click that, it's just going to generate a bonus number. It's not going to add it to anything. If you want it to add to something specific, you click the actual name. So that's the attribute section. The skill section. We'll move down here to the derived ratings. You'll see your move. That's your dex. Your run is your dex times 3. And then your shock, it's automatically going to adjust based off of your spirit. And wounds, you're going to start off with 3 wounds. If you click derived rating, you'll get another little pop-up that shows. And if you have any perks that might give you a +2, you can just type a 2 to your move. And now you'll see that my move was adjusted. And etc. If you have perk that adds to your shock, you can up your shock. You can up your wounds. You can up your toughness directly, because some perks don't up your strength, they up your toughness. And fatigue. Certain things might cause you to fatigue more. The armor has it automatically in it, but this fatigue would be anything in addition to armor that would cause you to suffer additional fatigue. So that's the derived ratings. We move on to defense. Defense will have all of your defenses, and they're separate because they're not always your skills. Sometimes you want to generate an active defense, and you just click that defense button, and right there I rolled a 15. That gave me a +2. So all my defenses are going to go up by 2. Now I hope in the future there might be a way to add a space that you could put that 2 in so you don't forget it, and then it'll automatically add to all the totals. Right now it doesn't. So if we were upping all of our defenses, we would have to do that mod to all the defenses. So we're actively defending. But you can do that, and then everything adjusts up by 2. So we have our combat defenses: dodge, melee, and unarmed. And you'll see that the defense upped from my mod, but my actual skills up here didn't. So if I have my dodge of 8, if I'm actively dodging, or if I'm actively using melee weapons, my defense has increased, but my skill has not, because I just did a active defense. Other things like shields, if you put shields and you are aware of your opponent who's shooting or swinging at you, you can do it adds to dodge and melee. So you can just have those 2 modified and get rid of the modifier for everything else. And say I had my shield and I was actively defending, then I could go to my derived ratings and I could add that to my toughness. So now you can see here my toughness, which is your strength based. My strength was an 8. Added 2 for an active defense with my shield, and now I have a toughness of 10. So all of that auto calculates. So I'll zero these back out. Then it has your interaction defenses, and then faith is used as a defense for a lot of miracles. And then, as I said before, you have 2 different willpowers, one based off of spirit, which is this top one, and then one based off of mind, which is the bottom one. So if I have my willpower and say I have 2 adds in it, those adds are going to count over here, but it's going to keep the spirit-based willpower and the mind-based willpower separate, which I think was a really good addition to see in this defense box. Armor up here, if I add armor down here, the values will come up here and add to the toughness, and it also will tell you if there's a max dex or if there is a fatigue. It'll remind you. So here we'll move to the next area, which is status, and we have possibilities. So if we start off with 3 possibilities, we can see that we have the 3, and then as you use them, you just click the minus sign. If you gain them, you can click the plus sign. Same thing with shock. We have an 8 shock. So we can take up to 8 and still function. And then when we take 1 over that, then we're KO'd. And then when we heal shock, we just click and heal that. And the same thing with wounds. We can take up to 3 wounds, and show 3 and 3. Now there are certain perks that give you an extra wound, so we'll temporarily give ourselves an extra wound. So we have 4. We have 3 wounds. If we take another one, you'll see that I clicked wounded plus, and this still says -3, but here it says 4. And you might say, why is that? Well, Torg Eternity has a rule that wounds only give up to a maximum of -3 penalty. So the -3 is going to stay there no matter how many wounds you take, and your wounds here will go up to the actual wound level. And wounds and your stymies are going to calculate into your skill rolls. So let's just say the person is wounded, only has 1 wound, so we can keep that negative. And we'll come back to that when we roll our next roll. Vulnerable, by Torg rules as written, it means that your opponent has a plus to hit you, but sometimes it's easier to just adjust your defenses instead of adding to the roll and adding a bonus. So if you do it that way, you can click once to make it vulnerable, your -2, and click it again to make it very vulnerable, -4. And you'll see all of your defenses adjusted automatically. So I just find that easier to use than remembering and adding another number. Like, say, oh, I'm shooting him now, I gotta give, he's very vulnerable, so now I'm gonna do a 4 either in my mod or when it comes up, when you press it, fire combat, and then you can enter a 4 here instead. Just don't do both, because then you'll give yourself basically a double bonus if you use the vulnerable. So stymied, again, once, -2. All your skill rolls are going to have a -2. You'll see that they weren't adjusted because it's actually to the roll, and I'll show you that that does appear. And then the very stymied for the -4. So we'll just say this character is stymied and wounded. And then fatigue will take your 2 base shock points of fatigue. It'll add any extra fatigue that you've put over here in derived ratings, and any armor fatigue. When you're down here, this FAT is where you would put armor fatigue. It'll add everything together, and then when you press that, when the fatigue condition shows up on your drama card, you press it and then you take that many shock. So instead of having to click twice, you just click this once and it automatically adds the fatigue there. So we're stymied when we're wounded. So say we're stymied, wounded, and we still want to do our fire combat, and we don't have a modifier. Again, you can do a penalty or a modifier if you need, and then you can submit. And you'll see over here the value is the skill, and then you got the stymied, which is -2, and the wounded, which is 1, and you only rolled a 7, which gave you a -2. So the -2, -3, -4, -5, add -5 to your 11, and you only got a 6 result. So you most definitely missed on your fire. But that's how everything in this status adds or subtracts, adds a negative, I guess is what it would be, to your skill rolls. So that's really cool that it breaks down everything for you. So we heal up, and we try it again. Now you'll see that those stymies and wounded are no longer taking place. So that's really cool that those all add up. Up here at the top you got status, and if you click that, you'll get a list of all the cosms. And with each cosm sourcebook that's released, they have their individual cosm possibilities, and this is the place that you can keep track of these. So if you're going to Isle and you got an Isle possibility, you can just put it there. Now you will have to remember to click it so that you can see it, but at least it's there. Otherwise it'll be either not there, or you'd have a huge long status place. So you just remember it's there, and you can spend them and use them. So the next place we have is perks, and we can add a perk. We have we said we wanted to do a monster hunter, so bulletsmith would probably be a good perk to take. So add a perk, click under where it says name, type in bulletsmith, and now I have the bulletsmith perk. And if you wanted to write a quick thing of the effect, you could write here like special ammo, and you'll see that there's a checkbox. And what this checkbox does is it expands. So then here you can write, say you have adamant, shells. You might have the holy water shell, and what was one of them? Maybe explosive shells. And you can just write what you want. Now you see, you have to scroll through it. But if you go over here, you can click and drag that and make it as big as you want, so then you can write all the information that you want in it. And you unclick it and it collapses and it'll just tell you what it is, but you're like, hey, I forgot what the bulletsmith was. What is it? Oh yeah, these are the 3 shells I have. And you might just put however much detail here as you want. Say that you start off with 3 adamant shells, only 1 holy water, and 2 explosives. So you can keep track of what you started with, what you've spent, all in your expanded. You can also do that with the perks. We'll add another one. Let's say we give her metals. We can do metals. And if you click the perks, both of them will check and both of them will expand. So it keeps the expansion that I made for the bulletsmith, and now the metal is just showing the normal. And I'll just pull it out a little more, but I'll make it different than the bulletsmith. So if you close it and come back, it's going to keep it to as what you originally moved it to. So that's pretty cool. And then you can expand each one separately by clicking the checkbox. So that's how you add perks. You kind of do the same thing with weapons and powers. You can add a weapon. You can name it. Say we have a Slayer's gun. We can add that here. And then once you're done, you click off of that box and it'll add it. And then it's added tech. And if it's a power or a spell, you can choose if it's, magic, spirit, social, whatever the axiom required for it is. Spells usually have minimum magic axiom, minimum spirit axiom for miracles, and for psionic powers, minimum social. So you can change that to tech. And I don't have the book right in front of me now, so I can't remember exactly what the Slayer's gun was, but Orish Tech is 18, so we'll just say it's a 16 for demonstration purposes. And now here it'll show what the axiom is. We go over here, and if it has 2 different axiom type things, we can also list a second axiom. The skill, it's not energy weapon, so we'll want to go and make it fire combat. But if you have any powers, you can do, say, miracles off of faith, or spells off of divination, conjuration. If it's a taunt attack, a maneuver, etc., you can put all. It doesn't have to be physical weapons. They can basically be any type of attacks you want to do. So I'll click that back, and then you can have your range. So again, I don't know offhand what the Slayer's gun is, but we'll say it's 40, 80, 160. And then if I click off that, it'll appear up here in the range. Damage for guns is fixed. I do believe Slayer's gun is 14. So you can do that, and now the damage is over here. If you had damage such as, say, a sword, you could base it off of strength, and then say it was a 3 now it's going to show strength plus 3 and then in parentheses 11, which is your strength of 8 plus your 3. So that will automatically show. But we'll do fixed 14. Ammo, there's 2 ammos. You'll see one here and one here. The bottom one, this is your total ammo. So the capacity of that gun, that power. I've even used this for force fields. So I remember how many force field charges were expended. Or potions for, say, the alchemy perk. But for the Slayer's gun, they can hold 6 rounds, so I can put 6 here, and that doesn't change this number here. This is how many rounds you currently have. So if I just had 6 normal rounds, I could put 6 here. It won't let me do 7. I'll see I typed in 7, but then I go and it changes it back to 6. It knows, hey, you can't put an extra bullet in there. And then as I use them, I can just, now I have 5. Now I have 4, etc. So that's kind of cool. If it's a power, this is for miracles, pulp powers, psionic powers, spells. This isn't, so I would unclick it. But if you do have it, you can then, how long does it take to cast? What's the target? Is it their faith or spirit? Is their dodge or dexterity, etc.? You have a whole list that you can choose from. This is a fire combat, so if I wanted to, I could just put dodge or dexterity. And then their duration, you can type in how long it lasts. And then for spells, you might have different effects on whether the success was standard, good, or outstanding. And you can write those things here to remind yourself. And then also, if you have anything here, attack notes for when you do the actual attack, you can type this here, and whatever you type in here is going to show up in your chat box. So, say I had some type of attachment to this Slayer's gun that gave me a +1 to hit. So I could just do +1 to hit. Or maybe I have something that's -2 to range penalties. Range penalties. So if I hit my fire combat and I forget that I had that, I could submit, and it didn't add the note. Oh, I hit fire combat up here. Sorry, that was what I did wrong. What you want to do is you want to hit where your weapon's actual name is. So Slayer's gun, it's linked to my fire combat, and I forget to add my +1, so I submit that. Now you'll see if I'm shooting something, say, at medium or long range. So now I get my value, I get my roll, I get my bonus, I get my result, but then it reminds me, hey, did you do that, that you don't have, you can ignore 2 points of range penalties. So then if I've added it, if I have a little modifier up here, I can ignore this, but if not, I can say, oh yeah, I need to add 2 points to that because I forgot about the range modifiers. And then for damage, say you have the adamant shell, you can write AP2 for your armor piercing 2. So when you want to roll for damage, you click the damage, and then it asks you if you have any bonus dice. So if you had a good or outstanding success, you could add bonus dice. And then you can submit, and it just, I didn't add any, so it's my base damage. But it reminds me that, hey, you have a AP of 2. So those are cool notes that you can add. One for the attack roll and one for the damage roll. Then we have armor. Armor we can add and say that we give it a monster hide duster. And the little checkbox is it worn or not? Axiom level you can put in there. Adds, I believe it's a 2. I can't remember, it has a max dex, but let's just say that it has a max dex of 12, and let's say that it fatigues. You can also write any notes, and again, if you click and you want to write more notes and expand that in this section, you can do that. but you'll see that if it's worn, it's going to take the adds, add it to your strength, and give that toughness. So the 2 added to your 8 gives you a 10 toughness. If you're not wearing it, then it's not going to add. And if you have 2 things, say that for some reason I had a ballistic vest, and I don't remember right offhand what that is, but let's just say that's a 3 and it's worn. Well, armor doesn't stack, so it's going to only keep the 3 and it's going to ignore the 2. So as you see, the toughness went up to 11, but it's not 5 plus your 8. But you have a dex and an extra fatigue, so those are going to show. So if you look, the fatigue of 1 adds to your base of 2, so now you have a 3. So when you fatigue and you press that, it's going to give you 3 shocks. So everything is calculated automatically. If for some reason you had something that gave you and does stack with armor, you can always go to your derived ratings and add it to your toughness here. So that's how armor works. And then we have equipment. Equipment, you can add 1 little thing for every equipment, or if you just wanted to have a space that you put all your gear, you can do gear and click that and then expand that as much as you want to write all your gear. And then if you wanted to use this for, instead of having to go up here and go to the bio and read your notes, if you wanted to add notes here, you can use these for basically anything you want to write. If you want to keep certain things, you want to have your normal gear separated from your magic gear, etc. You can just keep adding boxes, name them what you want, and then put your notes in here. Some people I know use it for, say, your limit values, how much can I carry, and things like that. So that is how you make a character sheet and fill it out, and all the cool buttons that link everything together. So the next thing we'll want to do, and I'll go ahead and in Roll20, everything automatically saves. So if I've adjusted everything, I don't have to save anything at all. I just go back and all my numbers are there again. So everything that I added, nothing saved. And if I leave the game and we go back and I come back in, everything is exactly how it was left. So there's no need to save anything. You just go right back into it. So we'll want to make a character token. So what we can do there is we just go to our art, and I want to make a character token for Arla. And that's right, she was a monster hunter, so I have to actually type in monster hunter. So I just go find the image that I want, drag it and drop it, and I want to make sure that it was on objects and tokens. If I had accidentally left it on map and backgrounds, then it's going to appear different, and even if I bring it down to fit a box, then if I switch back to objects and tokens, I can't move it. It doesn't count as a token. It just counts as a background. So I'll switch back to that. Delete. That's just hitting the delete key on my keyboard. And we'll go to object and token. So we'll drag that over. And you'll see that this has a little box, and like you saw before, you can make it bigger. So if a game master, you have an opponent that's large, you might either make it big, or if it's like a dog or a mountain lion or something, you might make it wider. If it's just really big, you can make it bigger and bigger, however big you want it. but it's just a character, so it's going to fill a 2 meter by 2 meter square. And you'll see that when you click it, these buttons pop up. You got 3 blank buttons, and then you have a gear button, and then you have it's just a button. It's for token markers. So these are going to represent your wounds, your shock, and your possibilities. So to do that, you can either double click the character and it'll bring up this edit token, or you can click it and it'll bring up a gear, and you can click that gear. And then you can say represent character. You can choose the character, and then it'll bring up the name. If you want to show the nameplate, you can click that, save, and then you see the nameplate appear if you want. Then whoever that character sheet, whoever was allowed to control it, then they can control this token. And then, as I said, bar 1 was possibilities. You can just either look for it, or you can just start typing it. Possibilities. And then shock. And then wounds. And you'll see that they automatically filled here. So I have 8 and 4, and I have 3 possibilities. Auras, we'll get to that in a moment. Your bars, these will show on the character. You'll see here it shows a 0 of 4 and a 0 of 8. That's your shock and your wound bars. But for other people to see them, you have to click C. And then here we have it visible to editors, meaning as a game master or people that you assign as editors, they can see the numbers, but everybody else only sees the bars. So if I would do it as hidden to everything, you can see that now they're not you can't see them. The bars, you can, if you're wounded or shocked and you take that, you'll see the bars fill up, but right now you won't see any numbers because those numbers are hidden. So normally for characters, I'll have it visible to everybody because I like my players to be able to see who's wounded and who needs healing, and Torg Eternity is more transparent. So I'll actually keep this over here so you can see the bars. And then you can change the bar location. Right now it's above, and I don't like it being above because then if I have a token here, it kind of blends into that, and you're like, whose bars are these? And even if you do top overlapping, they still kind of go up into that. So I always choose bottom overlapping, and bottom overlapping keeps everything within that same square. And then if for some reason you wanted to make it compact, you can hit compact, and then it kind of gets rid of it unless it has values. So let's put 1 shock and 1 wound, and you'll see now that they have a little red bar and a little blue bar that appear, but the numbers don't. So if it's a standard, you'll see the bars and they'll fill up as you take shock and damage. And then I always go ahead and do auras for everybody. The emit light is something I'll show in a different video for the dynamic lighting in Fog of War. But this, we're doing a free account. So you do the auras, and if you're the center of a spell that has a radius, you can choose the aura. And if you want to make it a square, you can make it a square, or it starts off circle. And then say we have a spell that has a 10-meter radius or centered on this person, you can make it as an aura, and then it'll show. And if I go here and I go down to this one, this is a ruler tool, and you'll see that it went 10 meters. So it has a 10-meter radius. And the ruler tool also can be used just to measure distance. How far is it from here to here? How far is my character away from something? Is it in range? So that's what the ruler tool is used for. But your auras, it's handy to use auras for centered on targets. And then you can have up to 2 auras. So say she had another thing, like say ward enemy or something, and then it'll show both. Now when you want to get rid of an aura, you don't want to make it a 0, because if you make it a 0, it's still going to highlight that character. So you want to actually just delete it and make sure that there is no value there, and then that will actually get rid of the whole thing. Now I'll move the character token over here, and I'll bring up the character sheet, and you'll notice that everything is linked. So 1 wound, 3 possibilities, and 1 shock. Oops, nope. Yes, sorry. So you click it, and it goes up here, it goes up here, and it goes up here. You can hit enter, 1 enter, 1 enter. You can do -1, enter, and you have to hit enter, otherwise it'll go back to your other value, enter, or you can just type in a number, enter, and it'll go up. And all of those will be linked. So your wounds will be linked, your shock will be linked, and your possibilities. Usually to get a bar to actually show for possibilities, I usually just do 3. That's your max normal possibilities, and now your possibility bar shows. Now it might seem a little weird that your possibilities is good when it's filled, but the other ones are good when they're not. But you just think of, what do I have, or what does my character have? You want your character to have possibilities. So seeing that bar filled, and you spend possibility, so then it goes down. So if I spend a possibility, -1, -1, oops, try this again, -1, and it goes down. But if you take wounds or shock, they go up. So you just have to remember, possibilities good when they're filled, the other ones are bad when they're filled. So it's how much do you have, how many wounds do I have, how much shock do I have, how much possibilities do I have. The previous character sheet, by linking wounds to the chat, I used to go down, but then it made it so that I couldn't go from, say, 3 to 0. Plus, when you go from 3 to 0, it makes it seem like at 0 you should test for death and defeat if you're wounded, or if you take your shock is down to 0, you would be KO, when by the rules it's actually 1 above that is when you either test for death or defeat, or you're KO'd by shock. So going up, you can fill that completely, and then it's the 1 more that causes you to either KO or test for death and defeat. So that's how the token works. You can also then, once you've filled out everything here in the tokens that you want it to be, you can edit, and then you select your token, and you can use the select token, and then you can save. And what that will do is, let's go ahead and give myself a wound. If I go to another page, another, say, scene, and I go here and I take the character and I drag and drop, since I linked that token to the character, then that's automatically all done for me. So I have my wound, I have my 3 possibilities. I don't have to adjust anything. Now, if for some reason that token needs to have a change done to it, say that I get a power that gives me 4 wounds, then I want to adjust the token. I want to go to the character sheet, edit, remove, save it again, and then add the token, and then do it again, because it'll keep that token that you first did. So if you make any changes to future tokens, it's going to keep that original settings that you had. So do be careful of that if you have tokens that get adjusted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a couple. I'll make a. Actually, let me go to another game I have. I showed you how to make a character sheet. I showed you everything about the character sheet. I don't need to show you how to do that again. So I'll go back to a game that I'm already playing, Friday Torg, and I'll launch that. So here's basically a game setup that I have, and this being dark, I might have the fog of war set up. So let me go to my settings up here, and I have my fog of war enabled. So I'm going to unenable it for now so you can see what's going on. What you can do with the character sheet is here I have that monster hunter, one of my players that was based off of. So here's Arla, the monster hunter. And I'll switch over to her character sheet. So as you can see, it's completely filled out and has everything in it. She has, under her weapons and powers, each of the adamant, or each of the Slayer gun ammunitions. So adamant, holy water, and she has phantom shell. Her armor, everything's there. So if we go up to this gear box, you'll notice that it says use tokens for roll tracking. If you want to click or unclick that, you have to be careful because it overlaps with this adventure tag. And I never get it on the first try. And sometimes it takes a really long time to get. So it's right off of that box. You can also toggle that announcement, like I said earlier. You can toggle those 3 pop-ups on and off using this, and then you can also set the damage. So before we had the damages read or display roll only. So what happens there is if you roll the damage, it's just going to ask how many bonus dice. Say we did a good success, and then it's just going to show what damage we rolled. So then we'll have to look at the opponent's toughness, and we'll have to look at the chart and figure out how much damage is done. So if we change that to ask for toughness, then when we roll damage, say we do the 1 bonus die, it's going to say what's the target toughness. So if we have a target, say like a Nile Empire Shock Trooper has a toughness of 8, we can submit that. And then it's going to show the base damage. It's going to show the toughness of the target was 8. The effect was 8. So if you see here, it says 14, and then it has in parentheses a 2. That means I rolled a 2. So the 2 plus the 14 is 16. Subtract the toughness from that, and you get 8 effect points. So 8 on that. The damage chart is 1 wound and 2 shock. So it automatically just adds that. And then if you have any, say I have a coup de grace, and I'm like, hey, I want to do a coup de grace, you can say, hey, 1 more die, and hit submit. What was the last effect? So the effect was 8. Submit, and then now the new effect is 10. So I actually rolled high enough to get higher damage, so 2 wounds and 4 shock. If you have this roll tracking clicked, and again, it takes a while, then what you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure your character token is selected. So we'll go to Arla here and we'll select her. We'll go back to abilities. And then when you click Slayer damage, you click that 1 and the target toughness of 8. You kind of get the same thing here. But then when you click the bonus again, it's going to automatically roll. It's going to remember that you had previously had an effect of 7, and it's going to add to that instead of having to type it in. So that's one of the neat things about the use tokens for roll tracking, is then it'll remember that roll track, and it'll keep that effect number. And that works the same with when you're spending possibilities or ups. If you have that use tokens for roll tracking, it'll remember that last roll. It won't remember the modifiers. You'll always have to add if you have any bonuses or penalties, but it will remember the actual roll. And then the next thing that you can do, if you're a game master who likes to make character sheets for all of your NPCs and your threats, you can choose the target, and then say I'll move her here and say she's going up against the Electric Samurai. They're both Storm Knights and heroes, and they shouldn't, but for purposes of demonstration, I'll go ahead and say that they're attacking each other. So I select Arla, because always have your token selected. If you don't, you'll get a error message, so I'll just show you what happens there. So if you hit Slayer Gun and you do everything, you'll see this. It tried to send a roll, but you didn't have a token selected, so it can't. So it'll still give you your rolls, and I probably disconnected there because she was using a Slayer Gun if she was using her Bulletsmith special things, but it'll have that error. So you want to have the character selected, and then you go to hit the gun, and then you can find out if you hit or not. Her result was a 14, so we'll just say that it hit, and now we want to do damage. So we can click the damage here. Let's say that she was using Adamant Shell. So we'll click the damage, and then behind here, behind the character sheet, if you don't have, it'll say choose target. So you click the target. Do I have any bonus dice? 14. It might have been, depending on how bad the samurai's dodge value was. Probably didn't, but let's go ahead and say it was a good success. And you'll see that the toughness was automatically added. So it knew that this token was linked to a character sheet, and that character sheet had a toughness of 14. So it automatically takes the base damage, subtracts the toughness, any dice rolled will be there. It'll give the effect, so I must have rolled a 2, because 14 minus 14 would be 0. So here we can see in the parentheses it has 14 plus in parentheses 2. So it gave 2 shock. So everything is remembered. Myself as a game master, I am a little lazy and don't like making character sheets for every single character threat. So I usually just have it as choose or ask for toughness. But as a game master, you can choose any of these that is comfortable for you, that you want to use. Whether it's just showing the straight roll where you have to figure out everything with the chart. If it's asking for toughness, and it automatically figures out damage. based off of the toughness you enter, or if you want to choose your specific token target. So that is all the things that you can use for that. We'll go back to the tutorial and launch that. Now there is a great video on how to make card decks. So I'm not going to show you how to make a card deck. What I'll do is in the description below, I will link you to a video from GM Matt, who shows you how you can add card decks and how to work with the card decks. And it's much better than anything that I could do, and it will also keep this video from even getting longer. But once you have your card decks, you can go over here to collections, and as I believe in his video, he'll show you, you can, if you're transferring from one game to another, say I had that Friday Torg game and I had all my card decks in it, but I'm making a new game, and as you see, the only deck that starts off with is playing cards. You go to the very bottom of your settings and you get this transmogrifier, and then you can choose your game. So we'll say Friday Torg, and then we can go down and we can add what decks we want. So say that I wanted the drama deck. I can drop that. You'll see that it appeared. And if I want to do a Destiny, I can drop the Destiny and add that. And then let's add a Aurora, so I can add that. So if we go up, we'll see that these three in green are the ones that were added. And then if you go to your collections tab, each one of them can hide or not. GM Matt showed you how to do the card divider for your pool versus your hand, so that's good. I'll try not to repeat as much things that have already been said in that video. I'll just show that you can shuffle the deck. You can either deal by drawing a card and placing it on a name tag, or you can click deal and then enter the players you want to deal to. So either way is viable. Normally for the drama deck, I only have myself be able to pick cards, and from the Destiny, I allow my players to, so when they succeed in an approved action, they can draw it themselves, or if they have a card that says draw a card, they can do it themselves. But I usually just do that for the Destiny. As a game master, you can set all of those how you wish to set them, and then if you get to the end of an adventure and you want to start your next adventure clean, you can recall everything. It'll tell you how many are in the player's hands, even if they're not online, how many haven't been played, just give you the statistics, but then you can recall, and then everything goes back, and then you can just shuffle them again. And then if you don't want to, like if I've already handed out all my Cosm cards, say I've given everybody a Cosm card, I can go ahead and hide that deck, but it doesn't take away from the Cosm card. And then if you play it, you can just play it right there. You can expand it if you need to read it better. If you want to take it, you can right click and take the card. And if it's played and you just want to discard it and you're ready to move on and you don't need it anymore, you can just highlight it and hit the delete key on your keyboard. It doesn't delete it, it just goes back to the deck. So if I show it and I shuffle it up, then it takes all of those cards that I used to delete and it puts it right back into the deck. So I went through a lot. Let me just, oh yes, one thing, adding, you can also add handouts. So we can make a folder and say that we do maps, And if we close that, characters usually are more important than anything else, so we can just make maps, and then we can add a handout. And it always starts off with mysterious notes, but we can just write map, and we go to our art page, things that we've already uploaded, and I can type in map, and let's say that I wanted to show them oh, do I have a world map maybe? Yeah, I have world map. So if I wanted to show them the state of the world, I could go here, add my map. If I wanted to keep it secret, I wouldn't show it in anybody who can edit it. Again, anything I can say, like you say month 3, anything that I want to add for the game master, hidden here, hidden notes, and then I can save it. And then you can expand it, and everybody, well, at first nobody's going to see this because I didn't allow people to see this. If I wanted them to see it, I would show to players. It would remind me that this is not visible to players currently. So in case you're going to accidentally show something that you wanted to keep hidden, you can just, back out of it, cancel. One thing I will show you, that if you click the little X a lot, it didn't do it here. I'll have to bring it up in a different thing. Sometimes when you click that X, it just makes a little bitty box that's faded in the background, and it won't actually completely go away. And what you have to do there is you have to hit cancel. But here, if we do show to everybody, now my screen doesn't look any different, but anybody else, this handout will then appear on their screens. And then if you click the magnifier in the middle, it expands it. And this is my custom Torg Eternity map, so you'll see that certain things are not exactly how they are in Torg Eternity. My world is kind of a cross between old Torg and new Torg map-wise, so that's why it's different. I just use Google Maps and have placed my own stele. You can do that, or you can go to the official Torg one if you want to and use that, change it, or you can do however you want. But that's how you would make a handout of a map. So then you can take the map, and if you drag it here, you'll see that it's indented again, so you can just put it there, and now I have my folder with my maps, I have my folder with my characters. If you want, you can make different types of handouts. I can do a portrait, and let's say I want everybody to know what everybody can do, or what everybody looks like. I can just do all players, set it up so they immediately can see everything. And then I can go here and I can choose that monster hunter and drop her in and save it. And then if anybody wants to see what she looks like, they can do that. And then they can also click that, and then they get what the monster hunter looks like. So, and then once you create it, you could make another folder and say it's portraits, and then you can take that and put it into the portraits. And if you close everything, you can then move the portraits down. If you want folders in folders, you could do that as well. So you can just set it up however you want. And it's not wanting it out because I have to go above, and then I can go below. So you can just play around with putting things in order. Handouts I use are world laws, the different cosm possibilities so that everybody can bring it up if they need to. Any combat options are there. Your bonus charts, all of that stuff, you can just add as many as you want. If we go back to the game that I've already created, Friday Torg, and we go to that, I have some handouts. When they start seeing different Edenos, I can say, hey, this is what the Edenos looks like that's attacking you. Or here's the really nasty Edenos attacking you. Characters, and then the character portraits. So, I can go and say, okay, here's the elven mage in your party, and here's the Tharkold guy, or the one of my players is a YouTuber, so that's his core Earth YouTuber, or the Cyber Witch. So you can set up anything like that. I have blasts, so that any character that has a spell with a blast, they can just drag and drop the blast and see who's affected by it. Eternity shards, if they pick up Eternity. Cosm possibilities, like I said, I have those. World laws, combat options, vehicles, creatures, things, world maps, etc. So I talked about the little button here that will show various conditions, and this is a Torg specific condition, but here's one that I made for the original conditions that were shown. So I had different symbols for stymie, very doubtful, things like that. The other game that we were creating together, I had not added those yet. So I'll take you into that. We'll launch the game. And if you press that, you'll get all the defaults. So they have lots of symbols that you can use. Like I used to use this for stymied, and this for very stymied, and vulnerable and very vulnerable, restrained, all of those type of things. I used the X when they defeated a opponent, so that they would realize that that opponent was already dealt with. But Roll20 very recently added a feature that you could add your own. So if you go back to your home page, you click Tools, and you can click Token Marker. So the default token marker is here, and then I made one called Torg Eternity here. So what I did was I just took the physical ones that came in the main core box, and I just used the snipping tool like GM Matt showed in his video, and I just cut out all the tokens and then put them in here. You can add more images if you want, just drag and drop. So if I go back to that Torg Eternity tutorial, once I make that, I can go here and I can add it. And I can add my Torg Eternity tokens and update it. And now it appears here, and then I can take the default one away, because there was a lot in that default that were never used. So I can remove that from the game. You can only remove it from the game if you add a new one. So you have to have at least one token marker set. So I can launch the game, and it keeps the X, and it keeps the colors, and these you can use to show different conditions. I've used the red one. A player played a Tharkold Cosm card that he got, I think, some possibilities, but he took a wound that couldn't heal for an act, So I put that there so that I would remind myself that, hey, that one wound, he's not going to heal. I usually only play every other week with that group for 3 hours, so we usually can't get through an act all at once, so that's a reminder of what to do. You can also write stuff to remind yourself for the next game, and then if you want to get rid of it, you can just select it and then delete. You saw that was red. That's because my color is red. If you have other players with different colors, their writing will appear. You can also do text, so you can say like, hey, we're in round 3, so that would let, and the text on this one would change if you choose it. You can change the font and the size, but you can remind that. Usually if you have different rounds and you move them around, move the cards around, they're going to keep in that order. So even if I bring my first round out to try to remind myself, hey, what happened on that round, I can put it back and it's going to stay in order, so I know which thing happened in which round. And these also can act as tokens if you want them to. And if for any reason you want to turn it, you can always grab that little thing up the top and turn it around. But they'll always be in order for the different decks. So then you can say you've used a couple of cards and somebody throws out a master plan, you can remember what was the last card thrown down, as they'll stay in order with most recent on top. So you have the different conditions. So if you hover over it, I just named what all of them were so you can see what they are. I put my varies, so my very stymie and my very wounded is red. I gave them a red tint before I uploaded the images because it's hard to see that -4 or the -2. But you can just click on whatever condition is affecting a character. So here is if they're restrained or if they're disconnected or they're concentrating, aiming, malfunction, waiting, your vulnerables, your very vulnerables, stymie, very stymie. So you can add those. They don't directly, so if I give myself very stymied, it's not going to show on the character sheet. So if I bring up the character sheet, it's not connected, but it at least reminds people that, hey, you are stymied, or the opponent, they might not see that the opponent's stymied or vulnerable. So it can be there as a reminder, and then when your next turn is over, then you can get rid of it. But it's really good for aiming, since you can't shoot on that round, you have to wait till your next round, etc. So that's also a cool thing. I'm going to change the background of this. I thought I had changed it to white, but then it was just background white. Is it not? Oh, let's go ahead and make a new one. I don't want to spend too much time. Or let's go to this one. So this one has a white background. Okay, so one last thing I want to show is Fog of War. So we'll go to settings and we'll enable the Fog of War. And also, I'll put in that jungle background just to show you what I was talking about with the extra space. I'll go to Map and Background, and I'll hit Jungle, and I'll just bring out a jungle picture. And this one doesn't have grid, so I don't have to worry about lining it up. But let's say I give myself some space down here and space over here. So I switch back to objects and tokens, and now I can see my token. And let's say that I want to have things set up and my party is going to be ambushed. So let's say they're going to be ambushed by some Vikings. So I have my art here for Vikings. So I have my little Viking guys that I can bring out. And then I've made my own threat cards, kind of like the ones that are given. And I can expand that to have all my defense values so my players can see what difficulties that they're going up against. And if you want, you can put down, how many shock they have. Or I guess they'd have 0 current. You can write down, how many wounds. Maybe they just have 1 wound total that they can take. They don't have any possibilities, so I can just leave that. And then I could go to advanced and show all my bars. But I'll keep it only visible to editors. So I'll give my players a little bit. They won't know exactly what's needed, but they can still see the bars. And then bottom overlapping, and in case any spells are centered on them, I can just do the auras and save that. So this guy's ready and these guys aren't. So I either am going to have to adjust these separately, or I can select him and then copy, and then just do some pastes. And they'll start off kind of like not centered in a square, but all you have to do is move it to a square, and then they automatically kind of link right in. So if I have an ambush, I might not want the players to see this stuff here, because then the scene shows and they're like, oh, there's going to be Vikings. And it kind of ruins some of the suspense. So if I go to my page setting and I click Enable Fog of War, and you see that it got bright. When you enable it, it gets dark. And this is what I, as the Game Master, see. Now up here you have this little flag, and that is what the players are seeing. So right now, even though I'm on this map, Scene 1, the players are seeing this. So to have them see what you're seeing, you move that flag, and now they're seeing this, but they're not seeing anything except for their player or their character token, because they're in the fog of war. So if you want to see what the players are seeing, you go up here to this My Settings and rejoin as a player. And again, make sure you have that flag where you want to see, because if I had the players on that other map, then it would take me to that other map. So here, they can't see anything, and I can't even see that token because I had taken myself off of that token, I believe. So if I controlled by, so if I go to my character sheet and bring up the character sheet and go to edit, that's kind of a little strange. So, it's because I didn't have the, let's check. Rejoin as a player. Nope, everything is completely covered by the fog of war. So if I want them to be able to see the map, I go to this little eye shape and I reveal areas, and then I just drag the area that I want them to see. And now if I rejoin as the player, now the player can see the map, they can see their tokens, but over here they can't see what's hidden. So they can't see that threat card, they can't see the number of Vikings that I've already have set up to ambush them. Same thing down here. They can only see what's on my actual area that I've revealed. So I use that fog of war a lot for that. The other thing that you can use the fog of war for is, say you're going in a dungeon or places that are discovered bit by bit. So I can reset the fog. Everything is covered. Say that they enter a tunnel, so I can open the tunnel up, and then they're only going to see the tunnel entrance. So if I go to rejoin as a player, they only see the tunnel entrance. So we'll move into the tunnel, and then maybe it opens up into a cave. So then I can use polygon reveal, and I can just left click in little dots, and the yellow part that's showing is the part that's going to show up to the players when I'm done. And then when I'm at the end, I right click, and then this area is opened up. So then I can go and show you what the players would see. So now they've got to the tunnel, I've opened it up, and now they can see that the cave or whatever is revealed. So that's what the Fog of War can be used for. It's good for indoor type things, dungeons, mazes, and things that the characters wouldn't necessarily see the whole battle mat. So let's see, I went through the chat, we went through art, the journals. If you want to add music, you can add music to your game. It will load up. You can set the scene to load the music when you move the players. So when you move the players to a new scene, you can set it up that music starts playing automatically. Then you have your decks and bringing your things over as your transmogrifier, your names. If you want to use the default audio and video, you can. You can have them turned off if you don't use video, or if you use Discord instead of the Roll20 audio. So that's basically how you would get up a Torg Roll20 game setup. There is lots of stuff. I covered a lot. I know it took a long time, so I thank you and appreciate you if you suffered through this. This is my first video I've ever made, so it's probably bad, but I just wanted to get out there everything that you can do in Roll20 from the beginning for a completely novice person who's never done anything in Roll20 before. It's a great way right now to connect with friends that you can't see face to face, but you can still game together. So thank you very much.